What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I am your host, John, and then this is partner in pod, partner in life, Claudia, hanging out here today to talk anything that comes up Green Bay Packers. I do have a couple of news updates for you that we are going to get to, but then also anything that you have, we're here for you on this lovely Wednesday afternoon. Before we get into the actual Packer news, I do want to send a gigantic thank you off to a few people who have already joined our Patreon. Yes, we launched it this weekend, and we've got a few people who have jumped on board. It's like I've been saying, if you have the means, great. Thank you. If you don't, I totally get it. Our stuff will always still be free here on YouTube and everywhere you can get your podcasts. It's just a way to show support if you so choose to. But huge thank you to Luke, John, Connie, Janelle for jumping on and being members of our Patreon community. Now, Packers news. There are some things to discuss. And first of all, I am going to put out a video about this later this week, but there were some UDFAs that were signed following the draft. Now, right after the draft concludes, like we talked about it at the watch party, it's just a sprint, right? Every team trying to get every guy. And the Packers were a little limited in what numbers they could do, but they did manage to sign 8 individuals to their UDFA list. One would be Peter Bowden, the long snapper from Wisconsin. A lot of people in the chat were clamoring for him. Then we also have James Esther, a little bit of a tweener defensive lineman from Northern Illinois, does some edge stuff, does some internal stuff as well. Jarvion Howard, running back from Elkhorn State. Donovan Jennings, the offensive lineman from USF. A lot of people thought that he would be a 6th or 7th round pick, but there he was, UDFA. Packers scooped him up. Played tackle collegiately, switching to guard. Now it's believed to at least be more versatile. Trey Jones, another tackle from Michigan, although he's definitely probably going to play interior in the NFL. Rodney Matthews, a bigger bodied defensive tackle out of Ohio. Messiah Swinson, the tight end out of Arizona State. And Raylan Goforth, the linebacker out of Washington. We talked a bunch about Ulo Fashio. Well, they didn't get him. Instead, they got a teammate in Goforth. And I am going to have a detailed video, roughly detailed video about these UDFAs coming out either Friday morning or tomorrow. It's not going to be our regularly scheduled Friday video, but there are those individuals for you. So, hello, everybody. Captain Kebbles, hello to you. Jennifer, hello to you. And Commando G-Man, how you guys doing? Thank you all for being here. So, beyond those UDFAs, there's a couple calendar updates I can offer you as well. This Friday begins the Packers rookie camp. So UDFAs are coming in, draft picks are coming in, but then also a collection of players that they have on a tryout basis. Last year, we did see a little bit of if a guy tried out well, they got rid of one of their UDFAs or got rid of a guy on a futures contract and brought in the tryout instead under an actual contract. So we'll have to see, but there are known some tryouts that are going to be at Packers camp coming up soon this weekend. And then also Matt LaFleur is going to be speaking on Friday as well. Hello, Anna. Thanks for joining us here. Now, one update for you about Matt LaFleur. We talked in the watch party about is he hurt? Is something wrong? Because he's not moving his left arm. It's true. Aaron Nagler of Cheeseheads TV, who's on a texting basis with Matt LaFleur, that's nice. He basically got a text from Matt saying, yes, I can confirm everything. He had shoulder surgery or cuff surgery the week before the draft. And so at the draft, he was still very much in recovery mode. And he was not moving that left arm from what you could see, sometimes in a splint, sometimes not. But yes, indeed. Coach didn't have a surgery and is on the mend. So, Chris and what's up? He's saying, oh my God. Eric Stokes is healthy. Hey guys. Hey, Chris. And that is true. Matt LaFleur said that Eric Stokes looks great thus far this offseason and kind of paired that with an update in Christian Watson as well, saying that thus far the hamstring looks good for Christian Watson. So two, I don't want to say chronically injured players, but certainly 2 players who have had their fair share of ailments in the last couple of years are looking pretty good as of right now. And it's not a bad time of year to be looking good. If you're not looking good now, it is concerning as we go through the summer. So, and then I figured, while we're waiting for a few more people to come in here, drop your questions. I thought I would share just a few thoughts on draft winners and losers. Because this is kind of a popular content piece going around. I didn't want to do a full video on it. I don't think it's worth that. But I think that there are, based upon the Packers drafting tendencies over the last couple of days, I think there were some pretty clear-cut guys who maybe now have longer odds to make the roster, or got some pretty strong endorsement from Brian Gutekunst as the process unfolded. So the first one I'll start with is a couple of guys that are kind of in between, and that would be Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt. Because there's some talk like Michael Pratt was such a draft day value. Maybe he's going to be QB2 now. I don't really believe that. I think he probably does do some things better than Clifford on the field. But like we've been saying since Clifford got drafted, like the dude is a capable enough quarterback, but also was picked because his intangibles are off the charts. And they really want him in the room at the very least. So we're really going to have to see how this quarterback battle plays out. The reason why each one of them may be in the loser category, though, is in all likelihood, if both of them can play competent quarterback, then we're probably looking at neither one exactly being lifelong Packers, right? Brian Gutekunst has voiced that he wants to get back into picking quarterbacks every year, getting back to the Ron Wolf way of choosing a quarterback, and then perhaps moving on from him after that quarterback develops in order to get future draft capital. Clifford or Pratt seem basically destined to find themselves in that mold, at least one of the two. But then for some winners, certainly the cornerbacks. Brian Gutekunst talked a lot about how he likes the cornerback position, and then he didn't really address it early on. He did get Kalen King in the 7th, who could be a massive steal. I still think he's probably going to shade a little bit to nickel, but he's going to be a worthwhile corner on the team. But still, they didn't go out and get some second, third, even first round corner to compete. It's got to have Valentine Stokes, even Valentine, feeling pretty good. Other winners, Tyler Davis, Ben Sims. The Packers did not clearly address the H-back spot in the offense in the draft. So even Tyler Davis, coming off of his ACL, being picked up back again on a one-year contract, their odds probably did just get better of making the roster. Same thing with all the wide receivers, especially the depth ones, right? That was a shining endorsement that Gutekunst apparently does not feel as though they need a number one wide receiver because they are rolling forward with what they got. And then the last winner, I'm going to say Kenny Clark's agent, because while the Packers, we talked about how Kenny Clark's got 1 year left in his deal. TJ Slayton 1 year left in his deal. The Packers may future-proof the defensive line position, maybe with a Ruke Horo, Chris Jenkins, et cetera. But they didn't do any of that. Any of it in any way, shape, or form. In fact, they're bringing in just a couple of UDFAs who may compete with Jonathan Ford for the bottom spot on the roster at defensive line. And to me, this is a sign that Kenny Clark at 28 years old might actually be getting that contract extension soon. I don't think the Packers want to walk into the season with both Slayton and Clark completely as free agents to be. I think we get something done there. So before I get to the draft losers, we do have a question from Commando G-Man.
Says, which, if any, of those drafted this year do you see forced to have to make an impact immediately?
The top one is probably Bullard. And it's not that he can't. I'm just going with who's going to get playing time, whether they look good or bad or what have you. I think that's going to wind up being Bullard, because there's a world of possibility that Jordan Morgan may struggle. Maybe he finds his footing at right guard, but there's a world of possibility where we don't necessarily see him for a lot of his rookie season. I hope we do, but it's very, very possible that we don't. Edgerrin Cooper, I think he's going to get playing time a ton, but if it doesn't go particularly well, then they'll probably put McDuffie in 2 linebacker sets. So there's a world of possibility where he could be a part-time player. Bullard, though, Brian Gutekunst referred to him as the new starting safety, and it just sounds as though no matter what, Bullard is going to be on the field, and he's not really going to leave the field all of that much. Other draft picks who are going to see it, like Oladapo, he's going to see the field. Williams, Hopper, but they're going to be guys who are probably going to be used more realistically in sub packages or even specialty type things that LaFleur and Hafley may want to call. Bullard seems like the guy out of all of the rookies that he going to be on the field, and he going to be on the field a lot, doing a lot of different things. And you just got to hope he gets ready for sure. And I think he will. So moving on to the loser side, the guys who maybe now have a tougher task ahead of them to make the roster following the draft. One, I think, has got to be Caleb Jones, kind of their developmental swing tackle for a number of years. But hey, Packers kind of made it clear, bringing in as well as Jordan Morgan, but also Travis Glover, bringing in Donovan Jennings, who may play tackle as a UDFA. Caleb Jones and Luke Tenuta have a lot more competition at tackle now. Their standing on the roster was a lot better off before the draft. Now we got several other prospects who are going to compete for time and roster spots. Same thing along the same lines for Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan, though, a little bit differently. Caleb Jones has never really had his chance. Sean Ryan has. If Sean Ryan would have gone out in those 50% of snaps last year and just absolutely bowled the world over, then we might not even be talking about trying to find a new right guard. But he didn't. There were still very definitive struggles as he was improving, which means obviously the Packers feel as though he's not just going to get handed a full-time starting job. So certainly, while I still think he's on the roster pretty easily, his standing on the roster, I think they sent him a pretty clear message that nothing's going to be handed. And then the last one that's pretty clear to me, with the addition of third-round pick Marshawn Lloyd, either A.J. Dillon on his one-year deal or Emmanuel Wilson, one of them is more than likely going to be in trouble. And we've talked about how, like, A.J. Dillon, maybe he is going to kick over to H-back. Maybe that's his role. Okay, well, then the tight end numbers get a little wonky too, depending on how they classify him, right? But for sure, you've got Josh Jacobs, you've got Marshawn Lloyd. They're the lockiest locks on the roster. And then Emmanuel Wilson, A.J. Dillon, and even Ellis Merriweather. Running back suddenly gets real murky from 3, 4, 5 on down, and seeing whether these guys can actually make the roster or not. So there you have it. There are my 2024 draft winners or losers. Captain Kebble Sam.
I like Caleb Jones a lot. Sucks he lost most of a year because of mono. But if I recall, you said he has struggled to get much push at camp.
Yep.
Mike Wall thinks his size limits his ability to play for years.
Which is a perfectly valid thought by Mike Wall. I mean, it wouldn't be shocking. Like, I told the story in the watch party, but like, you see Caleb Jones at training camp.
Big man.
Or even the softball game, the charity softball game that we've gone to before. Even at training camp, like, the dude dwarfed David Bakhtiari. Bakhtiari looked like a tight end or a wide receiver next to Caleb Jones, who's just, it's hard to say realistically just how huge of a human he is. So, I mean, that does have some bearing to it. But like you say, it does suck. Like, the dude did lose time to mono, but then also, like, it was really training camp last year. I think that's what you're recalling, Kebbles. When I was talking a lot about Caleb Jones and how the size was so apparent. The fact that he could occasionally lock down a depth defender, also very apparent. What was also really apparent was Luke Butkus was really hard on him in individual offensive line sessions. I would say more so than I saw Luke Butkus really go after any other offensive lineman. Butkus is a pretty old school coach. Like, he's very much in his family's pedigree that way. He will get after guys and he will scream at them. It's just like some other guys, it's pretty rare, or the yelling is pretty short. Caleb Jones was like, it happened a bunch. There were times where Caleb Jones, it looked like, ran the wrong way, and then Butkus would like pull him off to the side, and it was some more tender conversation, but it was still like, ruh-roh, he getting the one-on-one conversation. Now, with that being said, they did keep Caleb Jones on the 53 for basically the whole year for a reason. So they still believe in what they've got there. But your observations are spot on. It sucks. Dude obviously had to get coached. Maybe he's still getting coached. We don't know, but his standing on the rosters, it's a little under now.
Steve.
What's up, Steve?
Jarvan Howard is a steal as a UDFA running back. This dude is very strong and doesn't give up running. And there are some other stellar prospects I'm excited we got.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the UDFA video, but like, Howard is one that I'm not going to lie. I haven't watched a lot of Howard yet, but like, I've seen others talk about how, like, whoa, this guy can play. This might be Emmanuel Wilson all over again. It's just the fact that he came from a smaller school, which the Packers seem to do really well with sometimes. But I think the two UDFAs of the 8 that stand the best chance to actually make the 53 have to be, one, Peter Bowden, the long snapper from Wisconsin. Dane Brugler, the author of The Beast, he was his #1 long snapper that was draft eligible this year. And Matt Orzik had a year that was less than to be desired over the course of the season. So if Bowden comes in and does his job, it's a good chance. The other one that I have to say is Donovan Jennings. They gave him the most guaranteed money out of any of these UDFAs. He was a guy that was brought in for a 30 visit. Like, they appear pretty darn high on him. And you got to think that if they hadn't had Kalen King drop to them in the 7th, then maybe he would have gotten Donovan Jennings instead. So, like, it kind of feels like he's their 8th round draft pick, if you will, the guy that they prioritized after the draft getting. Jennings is a super interesting story. He was a very capable blocker at tackle, and then he wasn't necessarily asked to, but he felt through this draft cycle that learning guard would help his versatility, would help his standing. And so he's learning guard. And we're going to see which way that goes. So a very interesting story. I'll talk about that later this week for sure. But I think those are my top 2 UDFAs that can crack the roster for sure.
Anna saying, I'm hoping our new coaching staff will find a way to develop Caleb Jones because he has valuable tools.
Some things you just can't teach, and being a human giant is one of them. And that's the thing, right? Like, I'm with you, Anna. I have been pulling for Caleb Jones for a long time. But now I think we got to acknowledge, like with the addition of Glover, Tenuta still there, Morgan, they're going to give him a chance at left tackle first before kicking him inside. All of a sudden, Caleb Jones is like, he went from the bona fide swing tackle heir to now part of a cluster of guys that may do it. But I'm very with you. I'm pulling hard for him. And by the way, like, I've seen Caleb Jones interact with others. I've seen him interact with people at the softball game. Dude seems like the gentlest giant off the field. So, like, yeah, I'm pulling for him.
Steve saying, I heard big praises on Travis Glover, that he just doesn't give up and he likes to knock people down. Sorry for the
no, it's all good, Steve.
That's all good.
Yeah. Glover, trying to think of channel-friendly ways to say this, like, Glover's kind of monstrous at times. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, he does not give up. And he also, you can tell Glover really enjoys putting people on the ground. And I got to believe that that's one of the traits that the Packers enjoyed when assessing Travis Glover. I did dive into some like local collegiate, I don't know, call them chat groups, maybe the comment threads, etc., what have you, when some of these draft picks were done. And the people who were very familiar with Glover at Georgia State were like, dude's a monster on the field. Like, Packer fans are going to love him. And that was a very unanimous sentiment because they liked him a lot. Because, like, dude was just kind of a mofo on the field. And, like, yeah, you see it. He uses his size and he loves to bully dudes who are littler than him. So that could be fun to watch. And I got to tell you, my assessment of Travis Glover, just kind of from the outside looking in, from what I have seen, granted, I am not by any means a film expert, much better at consolidating news, but Glover does profile significantly more as a right tackle than left. So I'll have to see what kind of development train that they take with him.
Kevin Kettle saying, which UDFA do you think is this year's how did they get this guy? Guys on the TV are talking about by week 10. Before we see them is the most fun time to predict.
Right. This is when you can say whatever you want. So let's see. I'll actually make that dual pronged. Let's go with on the draft side of things. I think the one that fits the bill most likely is Kalen King, their 7th round corner. I do think for the Packers, he's probably going to wind up playing more like interior corner, a little bit more nickel sub-package type stuff than he is actually like outside corner. But like, the dude has been talked about as, like, even Ben Fennell, a renowned film expert, has a tweet out there from before last season saying, like, Kalen King may be the best corner in this upcoming class. And then he had a horrible last year at Penn State and fell to the 7th. So it very well could be him. In terms of the UDFAs, how did they get that guy? That's kind of tough. Because even if these guys crack the 53, it's hard to see a very large playing allotment for a lot of them based upon what positions they're at. I mean, maybe Jarvion Howard, but he's going to have to beat out Emmanuel Wilson, A.J. Dillon, Ellis Merriweather just to crack the roster. Donovan Jennings, I think he is one that could probably make the 53, but like, dude's going to be a backup lineman. We're never going to hear his name. Maybe of these, I would have to put the lottery ticket one on Raylan Goforth. He does have a lot of athleticism about him. He's a very willing tackler, a very aggressive tackler. I could see him being one guy that plays some special team snaps, and every so often, if he makes the 53, is going to come up with one of those plays on special teams where he just lights somebody up, and then we're going, oh, they got something here. I would have to say like that's probably my most likely of this year's UDFAs, but like there's no one on the list this year that's like a wide receiver or, you know, some guy that's going to make highlight after highlight. It's a very meat and potatoes type UDFA class, like almost the entire draft. So makes a lot of sense. All right, couple more.
We got Miserable Goat saying with more time to throw equals MVP.
Yes, indeedy, Miserable Goat. And I don't know if you caught the when I was giving the rookie facts thing, but like Michael Pratt is also going to benefit from a good O-lineman because that man takes his time when throwing the football. But you're spot on. More time for Love, more likely it is that he's going to be MVP, and we can all cash in on the investments that we've made in that regard. Right, Miserable Goat?
Steve saying, what's your honest opinion on Lloyd? 7.1 yards per carry, and he can also catch, some say. He was the best back in this class.
So I think Lloyd, he's not, I think, yes, he could pan out to be the best running back in this class if he can encapsulate all of those Josh Jacobs as tools that we've been talking about, right? But I will acknowledge he is also not the most dynamic running back in this class. You know, that would go to Trey Benson's probably more dynamic. Jalen Wright, certainly more dynamic. So when it comes to Lloyd, he does certainly have those traits. But like looking at the 7.1 yards per carry specifically, sometimes at USC, the man had a tremendous parting of the Red Seas. And I'm not saying he's a product of Caleb Williams, but I am saying you can tell that like he was put in favorable positions sometimes because of USC's aerial attack. That's not a knock. It's just he was the beneficiary. And there's a reason he transferred to USC to get more favorable options than he was getting at South Carolina. So like, good for him. But it is the reality of like not every single time was those 7.1 yards like fought for or hard earned. Sometimes it was just the first guy he met was 7 yards down the field. And in terms of catching, yeah, he had 13 collegiate catches. Brian Gutekunst talked about how important the combine was in assessing the fact that he can catch. I do think Lloyd is going to be a tremendous weapon in the screen game with his vision, his patience, his hands. I think he's going to be great at that. I think at times he's going to get a seam and he's going to take it like we saw in college. But I also think that there are going to be times where Lloyd just runs into a brick wall and then can't do a whole lot about it. And we see a 2-yard gain or like some A.J. Dillon-esque carries, if you will, especially in this rookie year as he's adapting his game to the NFL speed, to what kind of agility he needs now. So like, that's where I'd have to go on Lloyd. He certainly will be impactful in some ways, but I do not expect him to have this tremendous barn burner of a year.
Kevin Kebbell saying, listening to King speak on draft night, I legitimately wanted to run through a wall for him. Dude was burning up to not complain, but for the day he can start proving himself.
That was so freaking cool.
Love a guy who wants a chance.
Yeah, like King's reaction to getting drafted, his I'm trying to think. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like it wasn't angst about not being drafted, but you could tell there's a chip for sure. And like he's ready to prove some people wrong. And King is such an interesting story. He was so effective next to Joey Porter Jr. And then it just fell apart. And he just was not that guy. He got targeted so much more this last year at Penn State than he did the year before. And this time it didn't work out for him. He got burned bad by Marvin Harrison Jr., which most people did, but nonetheless, it's there. Super interesting. I'll tell you, I also loved seeing the reactions of like Oladapo getting off the phone, announcing the Packers, Bullard getting off the phone. Yeah, I'm a Packer. And then the people just screaming around him. Michael Pratt, too, getting out of the pool. And then announcing he's a Packer and his whole family cheering. I love seeing that stuff. And I will say, even in these tiny little snippets, you can tell how clear it is that Brian Gutekunst valued character, valued getting former team captains, etc., like that kind of thing. You could just see it with the guys. Like their desire is so clear, even in a 1-minute clip. Fantastic to see. Some of them were kind of not so emotional, but like a little reminiscent of Rashawn Gary being like Rashawn Gary, just that big blubbering ball of a mess when he was crying. I love Rashawn Gary for that, and I always will. But yeah, very much so. Mark, what's up? Hello to you. Steve.
When Malik Washington got drafted by Miami, I went bungee jumping off a curb, and my cord was way too long. Didn't work, so nobody try it. It doesn't work.
You missed out on all the
Steve.
Washingtons, my friend. I'm very sorry. Luckily, Green Bay has good wide receivers already. So there you go.
Kevin Couple saying, does the quarterback we took have good legs? Always felt a backup should be more of a running quarterback simply because it is harder for a team to plan for. At least that's what Joe Barry versus Ray told me.
Yeah, that's a valid thought. You know, I've always felt the same way. That's one of the ways that I like. One of the reasons I was talking about Keaton Slovis being a potential like day 3 pick. That's just kind of a thing. I would like my backup to have a little bit of mobility because chances are they may not have as strong of arm as your quarterback wants. Your offenses change a little bit. In terms of Pratt, I'm not going to call him immobile. I'm also not going to call him mobile. Like, dude is probably wonderfully average in that regard. Like, maybe he's got some quickness to him, but I do not look at Pratt like I would have a Slovis and say, like, oh, like, dude can move. Like, that's going to be a worthwhile thing. If there's trouble, he can get out of the pocket and really, like, gain some yardage on ground if need be. Pratt has some pocket elusivity to him, but I'm not going to look at Pratt and be like, oh, yeah, he's going to bust out a 20-yard run if things go wrong. That seems a little beyond him. Pratt, honestly, at this juncture, is much more, you saw this in the timing, you saw it in his game. His biggest flaw is hanging in there and waiting to make a throw no matter what. And that is something he has to get quicker processing. He has to get quicker recognition. He's got a nice arm. He does have good traits, but like he's slow sometimes. So in terms of mobility, even if he's got it, we might not see it because dude's going to hang in the pocket and deliver a throw 3 seconds later anyway. So,
but he beat Caleb Williams, so it doesn't matter.
Boom.
Because even our backup is better than the starter of the Bears.
That's a fact. Our third string, even probably.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's not even like, he's like the backup to the backup.
Right. We'll take it.
Kevin Campbell saying, also want to just say, really appreciate you streaming the entire draft as I was unable to watch myself. I know that was a lot of work, and I just wanted to say thank you for it and everyone involved.
Well, thank you, Captain Cabos.
Watching.
It was only our second draft. Like it's weird to think.
Crazy.
Like we started this the week before the 2022 season. Like we're coming up on our third season. That was only our second draft. It feels a lot longer, but like crazy cool thing about, but really appreciate the support. Thank you, man.
Steve asking, did you give us a draft grade? What is your draft grade?
I'm going to go B. Now, I'm not real big on draft grades because like, it's kind of nonsensical. Like we don't know.
Especially now.
Right. Like we don't even know what position Jordan Morgan's going to play. So like, but it was a very, like I was saying in the party, like a very meat and potatoes draft. A very eat your vegetables draft. This is not going to be all wide receivers. It's not going to be candy and soda and all the wonderful things. It's not a Cheetos draft. What it is it's a broccoli draft. Guys that needed to plug holes, guys that needed to be in the trenches offensively, reinforcing the foundation of the team and plugging holes that they were light at. Not at all a bad thing.
No Funyuns.
But but there were a couple picks that kind of had me going like, really? Already? I've seen the reports about like they're thinking that they're going to be picked. Like I get it, but a couple head scratchers.
That's why I was kind of in like the A- B+ area.
Yeah.
Because it was just like a lot of it was like, yes, logical, smart, yes. And then there were some of them that was just like,
well, and the other thing,
show your work. Where's your thinking? Like, I just want to like.
That's
we
fair way to say
obviously don't know anything.
Oh, for sure.
So it's just like the couple ones that you're just like, that's not what I was expecting. I don't really understand the thinking. I know there was thought behind it.
For sure.
Like, what was it?
I will say too, there's a way that you can draft all vegetables and still wind up with an A draft. And it's just like Brian Gutekunst's first draft, right? Where he pulled the magic trick of dropping back just a couple picks, but somehow picking up a 1 the next year and still getting the guy that he wanted all along in Jair Alexander. Like mastery of the board can certainly get you a higher grade as well. And this year, like Brian Gutekunst made a couple trades, but there was no, and he did get good value. Don't get me wrong. But there was no like he's walking out of there with a whole nother draft next year too, because he just like annihilated other GMs. So I take that into account as well.
Kevin Kebbell saying, I know it's off topic, but Devontae straight up saying he wished Jordan was there in Vegas with him felt like the final mark of approval from the old guard. Devontae was always kind, but to hear those words, dang.
Yeah. And It's an interesting way to spin it. I hadn't thought of that, like a final approval of the old guard. I think you're right, because Tay was never critical of love. I think it's like too much got made out of that. I think Devontae Adams was just a guy who ultimately wanted to go home. Like we've heard from others who personally knew the players that like the day the season ended, Devontae was out. Like he did not personally love living and spending his time in Green Bay. It wasn't the city for him, right? And his home was out closer to Vegas, and his best friend was playing quarterback. And Green Bay was moving to a guy in love who had shown some flashes, but he wasn't like he was this last season yet. So like he went home, and I gotta give him credit for that. I got no problem with that. But it is really cool looking back. And Devontae now is, man, he's in a mess out there with Gardner Minshew probably throwing him passes, and more trade rumors about going to Pittsburgh now and the whole thing. But it is really cool to hear Devontae sit back and go like, Jordan's legit. Like they're set up good now. And you could tell like there was a tinge of like sadness, but there also was a big tinge of like, good for them. Like I'm just happy. So that's really cool. We'll go for the algorithm. Thank you. Thank you. Steve.
I'm liking this. Evan Williams. He reminds me of Hyde. Is this Evans? I thought it was
it's Evans.
I know, but I was thinking my mind was like Even Stevens.
Gotcha.
Nope.
Yeah. Evan Williams.
Evan Williams.
Steve, I gotta disagree with you a little bit on that one. Hyde was always much more of like a zone, just pure zone guy. Like, and we saw that come into fruition in the NFL. He could play some man, but like his real strength in the zone. Williams is not known for his coverage. Let's put that nicely. Now he does have like some good snaps out there, but Williams is much known as I'm going to knock your teeth out type in the middle of the field, which is great. It wasn't Micah Hyde. So there I do have to differ with you a little bit. I would say like Williams is more along the lines of like not this level of player. Don't quote me on this, but like a Cam Chancellor type of like not exactly known for his coverage, but if you come near him, he's probably going to knock you into Tuesday. Packers could use one of them. That's all right.
Kevin Kevel saying that and his miss you too to the Packer fan is to me peak post-Packer grace. Yeah.
And, just one more note about like Devontae. Keep in mind when Devontae was in Green Bay, there were multiple years where he won the Tom Mulhorn Award for being the player that is most receptive, most helpful, most giving to the media. Devontae Adams was in his time in Green Bay. I know it didn't end the way that a lot of Packer people wanted, but the epitome of grace and class and I wish him nothing but the best. I hold no hostility towards Devontae Adams at all.
Joseph saying, Packers see what I see in Evan Williams after watching tape. Tape him Micah Hyde's number 33. Woot! Wes Hod even says Evan talks like Micah in interviews.
Okay, that I haven't seen. But yeah, the number 33 thing, I honestly, it made me think of when Clay Matthews left Green Bay, and then they immediately gave 52 to Rashawn Gary. And then Clay tweeted out, like, body ain't even cold yet. They gave Aaron Jones 33. That's what I thought of first when I saw that. They handed that to a fourth-round rookie safety. And the first thought in my head was like, ooh, body ain't even cold yet. Dang. Like, whoo.
Anna's saying it's way too early to do a draft grade. Maybe after rookie camp or the first game.
For sure. Like the rule of thumb with grading a draft is 3 years. You got to let the guys come in. You got to see how they contribute, etc.
Right. Because even their rookie year is just like,
yeah, I think on some level you can grade the process. Like what process did the Packers use? Did they get positions that were valuable at that spot? Did they get, positions that they need, et cetera, et cetera? I think you could do that and evaluate their process for what we know at the time.
Or what you perceive the player, like what round you thought that the player would go in versus what he actually went in.
Yeah, I think like a lot of that is fair. But to sit here and say whether a dude is going to be a bust, to say whether he's going to be good, to say, no, all we have is indications at this point.
Kevin Keppel saying Max Crosby said too, they are lucky they caught the Packers on the low end. Very humble of a guy who did basically win that game
Yeah,
for
he
them.
did.
Really cool. Jordan has so much move around the NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there was some scuttlebutt or some desire from Packers fans early in the offseason to go get Max Crosby in a trade when the Raiders were looking particularly fragile and they might tear it all down. I would have been down with that. I mean, like, in some ways, the new Bakhtiari of like, dude's honest. Dude's he's gonna tell it like it is, and he gonna have cigars, and like we would see him at Bucks games, probably chugging a lot. Like, I get it, but yeah, Max Crosby seems like a good dude.
We got Chandra saying,
What's up, Sandra?
I loved watching Darren Sproles, and I think our new
Ooh.
Marshawn running back is going to give us 4 years of awesomeness.
That is one comp I had not considered at all, to look at Lloyd in like the lens of a Darren Sproles. They talk about how he very well might have that receiving ability of a Darren Sproles, but the body's certainly different. I mean, Marshawn Lloyd coming in at 5'8 3/4 and then 220 pounds is a heftier, a stockier, a huskier, as we used to call my brother, a human being than Darren Sproles ever was, who was a little bit more compact, a little bit thinner. But that's an interesting comp for how they move. Yeah, I like that. Gotta give that some thought. I will say, too, the UDFAs that I was speaking on earlier with Howard, the running back from Elkhorn State, Goot's got to type because, again, Howard, 216 pounds on, again, a smaller frame. I think he's 5'9" off the top of my head. Like, Goot likes them backs thick. Yeah, no denying it anymore.
Yeah, Miguel was saying if Stokes can play like even halfway as good as 2021 Stokes, oh my God, bro, the secondary. I love that Barry was able to get pressure, but I'll take a better secondary over feast or famine pressure.
Absolutely. And that was the big problem with the Packers pass rush, was it was all or nothing. They would have games where they had 5 sacks and they were pressuring constantly. And then they'd go 2 weeks where it was like, did Sean still play? Did he get hurt?
Are they on the field?
Yeah. So like I'm very much with you in that thinking. And Stokes, I think a lot of people forget just how good Stokes was as a rookie. Like there were a lot of indications there that holy crap, they did it again. Especially in man coverage, him paired with Jair. Like teams aren't going to complete anything to their top 2 receivers now. And then, yeah, he did fall back a little bit in his sophomore year. Not quite sure why, but he did. It's a fact. And then the injuries began. And so if he's healthy, like really healthy, and he can replicate that rookie season, or like you say, come even close, yeah, and then have Carrington Valentine in the mix as a perimeter corner too, they're going to be cooking for sure.
Joseph saying Michael Pratt and Anders Carlson both have number 17.
Yes, indeed.
Indeed. Who goes, who gets to keep it?
Yeah. All right. So a couple things.
There 2 17s last year.
Yes. And there have been, like, this is a thing. When you bring in 90 dudes into camp and you've got a bunch of numbers retired, you do duplicate numbers for sure. And it did happen with 17. It's happened with a bunch before. Okay. So my guess here is Carlson keeps his 17 because I do think he's going to win the kicking job. At least at this point, I would give him 17, and then Pratt has to switch to some other more conventional number in the quarterback realm of things.
Number 7. Number 7's Wyatt, right?
Number 7?
Yes. Because that's what Pratt played with in college is number 7.
No. Wyatt's in the 90s. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking. Is there a 7 right now?
There is a 7.
If someone out there who knows it off the top of their head, let me know.
Because 7 is sentimental for Michael Pratt. Quay Walker. There it is.
Thank you, Chad.
But yeah, 7 is like sentimental for him. So
yeah,
I'll have to find some other number.
Yeah,
he's got a 7.
I'm sure it'll get taken care of somehow.
That's saying there's a possibility we landed another 7th round quarterback gem in Keelan King, who was fantastic in 22. It seemed he's motivated to prove everyone wrong that he's not the guy from 22. Goots in his bag.
I talked about King a bit earlier. Yeah, like they might have very well gotten a steal there. I still think in Green Bay he's probably going to play more nickel than outside. But like I think it was Nate Tice from Yahoo Sports who said like he does not understand how King fell. Because even taking really rough last year for King into account, all the traits are still there. The guy that he was in 2022 is still there. You just got to bring it back out. Get that in the 7th. Steal all day.
Kim Kibble's weird trivia of the day. Zack Snyder of 300 and Justice League fame, or Dread, depending on your view, has the same birthday as Lombardi and said he hopes one day to make a movie on the three-piece.
I had no idea, and I like all of that. Like, sign me up. Yes, I love that.
Just saying, O-line Travis Glover, number 79, ran for first down on punt fake in college. Look out.
Yes.
Okay.
That is why they drafted him. No doubt. He's their new special teams
Who
ace.
saw that film and said, he's mine.
Yeah, so Anna.
No, I see him as a giant warrior that other teams can't get past now. I get that they aren't useful if they can't move and have no skills, but size helps, but can be a con too and can be slow.
Yeah, for sure. I know exactly what you're saying, Anna. Ted Thompson, he was referring to D linemen, but when asked about big dudes, he said God only made so many. In terms of Caleb Jones, they made even fewer. So, like, I very much understand the want of, like, you just can't teach some of that stuff. So hopefully he can keep it going.
Josh says, when asked about his most memorable moment in his career, Adams mentioned how, like myself, he's still traumatized by how the game versus Seattle ended in 2014 and an NFC show. He was nice enough not to name names.
But we all know. Yeah, you're spot on, Josh. And they...
Steve's saying, aren't they allowed to unretire a number?
Yeah, but 2014. Just give me a second, honey.
No.
Steve, aren't they allowed to unretire a number?
We're just going to move past it and not talk about it.
Yeah, they can. They can. The Packers won't. To get your number retired in Green Bay is like the highest honor they can possibly bestow, because there's the Packers Hall of Fame. Then there's the Circle of Honor, which is for guys who have made the NFL Hall of Fame, or like just that they feel very compelled to, but they very, very rarely have done that in 100 years. So then there's the Ring of Honor. Then there's number retiring, which is truly reserved for generational talents, that pillars of the team, like the top echelon of the NFL Hall of Fame. Nitschke, Starr, Favre, Rodgers will be there. Although I will note the Packers have said, this was, I think, last summer, they said that they're keeping an eye on the Favre legal stuff just to see if they need to revoke anything there. But yeah, I digress. Yes, to answer your question, yes, they are.
To unretire that one?
But they're not going to. No. I mean, you might see it for like some kind of training camp thing when they've got like 100 dudes in there, but like that dude's not making the team.
Commander G-Man saying, yeah, he has that arm tattoo of it in response to Pratt with the number
7. Yep.
I believe it's because I want to say it's either somebody that he played football with in high school or in college, played with the number 7, and then took his own life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what he does to remember that guy.
Yes, indeed. All right, only got time to take a couple more, so we're going to fly through these. Captain Keppel saying Stokes was in talks with Savage and Amos a lot after plays during the Commanders game, considering the decline of all three, but one is still there. I think we may know who is in the wrong spots. It is possible. Catching up. Dan, John, could you explain the new kick return rules? Oh, that's really hard to do quickly. Yes. Okay. Basically, the long and short of it, okay, they altered if you do a fair catch versus etc. I think they even got rid of fair catch technically. It changes what yard lines things are brought out on. Okay. And then it also changes oh, my words are failing me. Like the configuration of players in their formation. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. So we got to jump, so I'll save that for another time. But like, Dan, please remind me, and I will go into that in much greater detail some other time, because it is a little complicated, and I'd love to fully explain it to you. Chad, who's your favorite draft pick this year? John and co-host, who's yours?
Marshawn Lloyd.
There you go. Oladapo.
Yeah, you were.
I like him a lot. Yeah.
Starstruck for that one.
All right. Oh, there you go. Josh saying there's a solid explanation of the kick return rules on the McAfee show. There you go. Dan, and they broke it down really well. So Dan, if you would choose to go check that out. So, and then Whiskey, last one before we got to jump. Whiskey saying 2025 big boards are coming out. Ugh. It's going looking like D-line is going to be a very strong group next year. Could work out great for GB. True. I am so hesitant to even look at 2025 draft stuff, partially because like Kalen King is the perfect example. Kalen King would have found himself very high, probably top 3, 4, 5 corners last year.
Way too early.
And of course, he's an extreme example, but like, yeah, my attention now is going to be turning towards training camp, what they're doing in practice. Oh yeah, it's time to
worry about draft when we don't have an active football season coming up.
Yes, that is true. All right, so we got to get out of here, but thank you everybody for checking it out. And one last plug. I'm not going to talk about this a lot, I promise, but like one last plug for our Patreon. If you enjoy it around here, go check out our Patreon. It's got some cool perks, including memorabilia giveaways. Once we get up to a certain threshold of people, I'm going to be giving away like signed Packer stuff. Not going to be shy about it either. So like, go check that out. Also, we're starting up a fantasy football league that you got to be in one of the tiers to get into that. So make sure you hop onto that as well. But just go check it out. And if you got the means to do so, wonderful. If you don't, it's okay.
We still love you.
All of our content will still always be here for free for you. So thanks everybody. Do hope you're having a great day. I will see you soon. Be on the lookout for that UDFA video, either coming out tomorrow night or maybe like a Friday morning premiere, and then nothing later Friday. I got some appointments and stuff, and then I'll see you next week. So thanks everybody. And as always, go Pack, go.